Here we go. Hey, everybody. This is Andre back with our new narrative. And today is, what is it, August 21st already. And I'm in California where everything's on fire. So pray for me. And I got my good friend Mark with me today. And we're going to listen to Mark explain to all those out there how wonderful socialism is. Because he has living under a socialist regime, because he has firsthand knowledge of this. And as an African American growing up in Detroit, I kind of had firsthand knowledge of it as well, at least in thought and political ideology and things like that. So the best the best disinfectant is sunlight. So we're going to expose a little of what socialism is all about for all those out there marching in the streets talking about Black Lives Matter, which is the organization is basically Marxist in thought, in ideology, in goals, and everything. So wake up, folks. And no further ado, my friend Mark. How you doing, Mark?
Very good. Thank you, Andre.
All right.
And as you mentioned, so the goal is today to open up a little bit of the angle of the view between how people live here in US and take it as given, and how people live in other countries, especially under the socialism, and not just socialism, even of the fresher version like Venezuela that just started a few years ago, and they very quickly ruined their economy. But even people who tried to build socialism for almost 70 years, they said in the beginning, okay, we can have communism next day, but we probably can work slowly toward that noble goal. And they tried really hard. Initially, it was very acceptable idea that it is possible. And so here we are. I don't know, you want to start, with the points, and we're going to compare the experiences between me and you.
Yeah, so Mark, he was talking to me earlier about just the medical system he grew up under. And, I'll let him go with what he was explaining to me. But yeah, Mark, so tell the folks out there how great a socialist regime is, especially with this argument for universal health care. So how was universal health care for you?
Yeah, so let's start from the very beginning. When I was born in Soviet Union many years ago, that was a universal healthcare already in progress after 50 years. It's 40 years after World War II. System was supposedly working normal, providing those medical service to the people. And I was born in the hospital with no, disposable needles available. The instruments were reused. No food. You had to bring your own food. Like my mom went into labor. She shared the room with the 20 or something like that other ladies. My dad had to bring her food every day. And it would be much better to bribe the doctors and nurses to get actual attention and better treatment than if you didn't.
Well, hold on. Let me stop you there, because it sounds to me, because I grew up in the projects, Brewster Projects, Detroit, Michigan. Wasn't born in the projects. I was born at, I think, Hutzel Hospital. I don't even think it's still around. But sounds to me like this ghetto kid had a much better experience than you did. I've never heard anybody complaining about sharing needles at a hospital in America. And yeah, I'm pretty sure my mom and my dad were in the room by themselves back in the 70s when I was born, besides the doctors and nurses who they didn't have to bribe. So I don't know, man.
Sounds like 1-0 to capitalism so far.
Right. All right. And then you were mentioning education.
Yeah, so here is education. So before the school starts, in Soviet Union, there was the kindergarten system. Obviously, little kids had to be taken care of so the parents can work. Socialism or capitalism, it is the same trouble, same principle. So government provided paid daycare, was not too far from my house, and they actually fed you, but the treatment of the kids was often spotty, meaning there were some abuses and some kids suffer. Parents were not allowed to ask questions on how the day went, although you know, the kids would probably complain. And I remember, well, I don't remember, but I remember my mom telling the stories how I sometimes would be complaining about someone's hitting me or even mistreatment from the staff. But there was nothing to be complaining about because it's government provided, it's free. So you get, you know, what you see is what you get, pretty much.
Wow.
And yeah,
okay.
How about you? So far,
the one thing I remember, I went to preschool. I'm one of those anomalies in America. I didn't go to kindergarten, and I didn't go to the prom, but I survived. But I remember in preschool, I have this permanent scar on my forehead. If we ever meet in person, you'll see it. I ran smack dab into a table while scooting on like a skateboard type of thing. Wasn't a skateboard, but it had 4 wheels and whatnot. And man, I remember to this day that teacher nearly fainted, because if you get hit, you know, you draw blood from here, it's just right. So everybody got involved in that. And more importantly, because kids are kids, you know, if you're in a capitalist regime or a socialist regime, you're going to have kids bumping their heads up against walls and stuff like that. But what I do remember is I went to that preschool, and I also went to another preschool. So we had choices back then. And then the other preschool, I went on without any physical harm, basically. But I think the point here is there were choices. I went to 2 preschools for 2 different years. That's why I skipped kindergarten. So we have choices here. So I'm going to say capitalist 2, socialist 0.
Let's just extend a little bit, you know, into the actual school.
Okay.
And you know, I was actually in the area of 3 different public schools available to me to go. The differences between schools obviously were the staff, which you didn't have any feedback or control over. But what you could choose between different schools is the foreign language.
Oh.
So one school was teaching English as foreign language, another school would teach French, and the third school would teach German. My reasonable explanation that I received later on in life on why there were different languages and, you know, such a variety, was because a socialist regime would pester kids with the foreign languages from the very little age, select those who are actually good with languages, and employ them in intelligence. So that was not because they wanted us to speak to foreigners per se. They just wanted to have a good filter on those people who have talent for languages, and they would then, you know, take them and send them as spies. Wow. But you know, school system was a very rigid, pre-approved syllabus program. There was no, you know, I'm better with the certain topics. Let me take 5 points of that, and I'm, you know, not so good with math, so let me go slow down on math. There was nothing of that sort. You had to excel in all the topics, including topics of the party history and history of communism, reading Karl Marx, preparing to serve in the army, which was obviously not voluntary, but compulsory for boys in Soviet Union. and I think it still is. Many kids from my, at least, generation, including girls, can assemble and disassemble AK-47 under 10 minutes with their eyes closed, because that was the requirement.
Wow.
And it was part of the school syllabus.
School syllabus?
Yep.
Wow.
Okay,
Wow.
now share your experiences, some of it in the book.
Yeah, some of the stuff I wrote about in my book, you know, pales in comparison. But did I write? Yeah, I remember transporting one of those weapons, but I was out of school at the time, taking it to someone who can make, hopefully the statute of limitations is passed on it.
You're the lawyer here.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, my cousin was taking it to someone to make a semi-automatic, fully automatic, which is illegal. But yeah, we didn't get taught how to assemble and disassemble weapons in school. Although, unfortunately, a lot of my peers walked around as if they were in an army with weapons. Yeah, and it's something about the language thing, because for me, I ended up going abroad and going to Japan and learning that language, Japanese. And while I was living there, during the 6 years I was living there, every so often you would hear this about communist North Korea. They would literally come to the shores of Japan in these little submarines and kidnap Japanese people, take them back to North Korea and force them to teach North Koreans Japanese so that the North Koreans can come back to Japan and spy on the Japanese. Now, y'all can go Google that, look it up for yourself. I'm surprised there hasn't been a movie about that. But yeah, it happened enough that I remember that. It would be on the news every so often. Another Japanese little kid, a little girl, or a couple was walking along the beach and they haven't been heard from since, right? And then it was a former North Korean, it was a former U.S. soldier who fought in the Korean War, who I believe he ended up getting sick there and wanted to come back to the States. And that's how America found out about all these practices by the North Koreans. But yeah, Google that. It's really interesting. We're going to keep moving along and talk about one of my favorite subjects, food. So how was food in the socialist regime?
Yeah, so the food is an interesting topic, because there was no concept of a supermarket. There was a concept of a grocery store, obviously, and they were relatively small establishments. But not only they were small because of the physical dimensions, they were also small because of the variety or lack of thereof of the food that would be present on the shelves when you went there. So bread was something that would be typically in, and also I'm now talking about big city, which I was living most of my time. But my grandma, for example, she lived about 60 miles from the big city, and they were not as supplemented with even bread. So even for bread, there was a long line in the morning. I remember myself standing in that line a couple of hours, watching that truck being unloaded, and then, being let in the store, because if you are not in line and you are coming, say, half an hour after the store is open, the shelves are empty even of bread. Wow. You would not have even bread. So, the picture of long line next to the store was so telling that people would drop everything they were doing. And I remember myself, like, for example, walking to a musical school, which I was attending, after hours of the regular school, and seeing a line, I would, go to the public phone booth, calling my mom, saying, "Hey, mom, something is going on. Some food is going to be delivered to the store. I will take a place in line, but you need to come and replace me because I need to go to my music." And that's how we operated, believe it or not. Because the only other available option was, again, through the bribery thing. If you know people working there and they are your friends, or you give them something in exchange for this info, you may receive a call that, hey, by the way, we received something, we left something in the storage aside, so if you want, this will cost that much, and you can, pick it up from my house or, somewhere. So it was a very corrupt society throughout.
Wow.
Because you needed to survive. People make money when there is a lack of something, right? It's a demand and supply kind of scenario.
Okay, well.
So socialism very quickly becomes a very limited resource society when the money runs out.
Well, I like I said, I grew up in the Brewster Projects. I have no story like that. I mean, I grew up eating government cheese, which it looked like a block of orange. That's all. I mean, it's like hard Velveeta cheese, if I can remember that. I didn't mind it. We had bread, we had powdered milk, we had powdered eggs. I remember eating that, but I don't remember any line for that. I don't know how we got. If I'm not mistaken, it was delivered to us. If I'm not mistaken.
Were your family eligible for food stamps?
Oh yeah, back when I was a little kid, yes. My mother used to laugh that she was on every alphabet there was, because there was like an ABC program, there was the WIC program. So yeah, the first 10, 18 years of my life, yeah, we were definitely on various programs. Yeah, no lines for anything that I can recall. Now, there may have been lines for something, but not everybody in America. No one stood in the line. I mean, maybe the poor and destitute had to stand in line for something, but that wasn't a common theme throughout my childhood. I just don't recall a line. Someone out there who was around during the same time I was in Detroit, you can correct me in the comments, but I just don't remember those lines. And as far as variety is concerned, I'll be fair, we have much more variety today than we had back then. But back then, we had a ton of variety. What we could afford was limited. I mean, I had malto meal, cream of wheat, oatmeal, for breakfast. Rarely, every so often, pancakes and waffles. But yeah, I don't remember any. I never went to sleep hungry, ever, in this capitalist society. Now, with that said, there are people, I've had friends who don't look like me, white Americans, who said they've gone to sleep hungry. And I've said, well, feel for you. You should have pulled your white privilege card and got some food or something. Because, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, so there.
As far as I know, when you're on food stamps, you have some limitation to what you can purchase with them. So I'm pretty sure that first sign of socialism is when your choices suddenly get limited. So even the food stamp as the, some kind of introduction of social services,
right,
have strings attached.
Oh yeah.
And it should, by the way, in my opinion, because without those strings, you will not be even, wanting or be interested in getting out of those programs.
Right. So what do you
think?
But
yeah, whoever is dreaming of socialism, think about it. You are not getting that variety. You are not buying yourself a brie. You are buying yourself that block of cheese with the food stamps.
I like that. Yeah. And we're going to wrap this up. We're going to definitely come back with another, the next one, we're going to talk about job opportunities, assignments, compensation. We're going to talk about vacation and retirement. But before we go, I've been thinking a lot about this subject. And I think in the last podcast I did with my friend Leo, I mentioned that I was reading a book called The Sociology of the South, and what's called The Sociology of the South, or The Failure of Free Society, right? That's the title, by George Fitzhugh. And his perspective on slavery, because he was a pro-slave guy in the South, and he has to defend the institution of slavery. And there you get a perspective of someone who's lived in a world where a free society is novel, is brand new. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, even though America went through the revolution, and he's basically addressing this issue almost 100 years after 1776, because he wrote the book in 1854, it's still new to mankind. This, you know, individual rights, individual freedom, individual responsibility. And the reason I'm bringing this up, as it correlates with what we're talking about, in a socialist regime, the state takes care of you, right? It may not take care of you well, but it takes care of you. In a capitalist regime, you have to take care of yourself. That's the fundamentals. That's the fundamental difference. So from that starting point, that's how you think about the two systems. I have to take care of myself and the ones I love. The state takes care of me and the ones I love. So think about that until next time. And I'll see you. Me and Mark can see you again soon, okay? Take care. Remember, like, share, and subscribe this podcast with someone you love. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.